Welcome to Fresh Outlook. I'm Frank Cipolla. This week we heard from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton on why she needed to keep a separate and private email account, as well as a private server in the basement of her home. All of it happening as she served as Secretary of State, and that has now raised questions about whether the practice was ethical and whether or not she attempted to hide anything. The question is, will voters buy her explanation as we get closer to the 2016 presidential election?
There is another dust storm whipping around Hillary Clinton. During her time as Secretary of State, Clinton used a personal email account rather than a government-issued account for official business. Now, at the time, the limitations of technology meant Clinton would have had to carry two devices, as security encryption systems would not allow two accounts on one device, and Clinton chose to carry one device. Critics say the use of a private email account meant official emails were not archived in the government databases. Yet, it should be noted that most of her official emails were sent to government addresses, which were automatically preserved.
When I got to work as Secretary of State, I opted for convenience to use my personal email account, which was allowed by the State Department, because I thought it would be easier to carry just one device for my work and for my personal emails instead of two.
Since the story came to light, Clinton said she had provided all of her emails that were work-related to the State Department, but did not keep personal emails. The State Department said on Tuesday it would post Clinton's emails on a website after a review. Clinton urged the department to quickly review and release her emails.
Mrs. Clinton, and what you should do now, that would be inappropriate.
Republicans who have questioned her ethics and transparency were not convinced. Meanwhile, top Democratic donors say they are unfazed and think it is unlikely these events will affect fundraising for the presumed 2016 Democratic frontrunner for president. White House has said rules on whether personal email accounts can be used on government-issued devices appear to vary among agencies.
Well, joining us to discuss how big of a deal this latest flap is or isn't are Republican strategist Jeanette Hoffman. She's from Capital Impact Group. VP of Academic Affairs at Fairleigh Dickinson University, Yohuru Williams, who is also the author of Black Politics, White Power. And political science professor Bill Rosenberg. He is from Drexel University. Panel, welcome.
Oh. Thanks.
So let me start with the obvious question. Is this a big deal or not?
It's a huge deal from this perspective. It's an opportunity for Hillary Clinton's enemies to focus on what is a breach of protocol. Even though they talk about this differing over agencies, it shows a lack of judgment on her part. As Secretary of State, having a separate email account on a private server opens her up to foreign counterintelligence. Certainly that makes this a point that people can make of her being not very cautious in the way that she's proceeded with government, so potentially sensitive government material.
So you're in the camp that it is a big deal. Jeanette, I'm guessing you are as well, as the Republican strategist.
Yeah, I think it is a pretty big deal. I mean, Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State when she decided she wanted to have her own private server in her home in Chappaqua and conduct Secretary of State business. This is not a Gmail account. This is not a Yahoo account. This is her own physical server. And that really left these emails very susceptible to hackers. Just a lot of questions about national security as well as perception. I mean, this kind of stinks. It's the Clinton scandals all over again.
The one she had in her home, the private service, she says were private emails about Chelsea's wedding, about the normal stuff. So if they hacked into that, they're really not hacking into anything, if we are to believe the story.
Well, if, you know, look, there's a lot that needs to be found out here. She deleted 30,000 emails, which is a big concern of mine. How do we know, what was in those emails? Are we just going to take her word for it? This is, the Clintons once again playing by their own set of rules, being overly secretive. And I think one of the best lines this week was George Will, the conservative columnist, who said, "The Clintons can find a loophole in a stop sign."
Bill, how much of this is Hillary Clinton maybe knowing it will be a problem, get it out early, resolve it, so when the election comes, she says that's already been asked and answered?
Well, that's a possibility, but I don't think she was really looking to take on this this assault.
Well, we're far away from.
No, I understand. No, I'm saying, but I don't think she planned to have this come out early so that she could get it out and have it over with. I think part of this whole flap, though, is everyone recognizes an issue, and then it's gotten a little bit out of control. A lot of, even the discussion that we're having here right now, I think, is a little bit over the top. First of all, the server wasn't hers. The server was really set up for her husband, former President of the United States, and you got to imagine that there would be an incredible security encryption that was on that system, because he, first of all, has a position to maintain. He's also dealing with world leaders, and he doesn't want anyone coming into it. Second of all, almost every major presidential candidate in 2016, all the Republicans have the same laundry in their basket, okay? Jeb Bush has gone out and deleted tens of thousands of emails so they can never be traced. Scott Walker's done the same thing, Bobby Jindal, Rick Perry. So a lot of people that are very high up in our system, maybe not elected officials alone, but in our system, operate that way. And I have to tell you, as a college professor, I maintain 3 email accounts. I have my university, which is a .edu. I have an AOL account, which my wife keeps clamoring at me. I have 17,000 messages in it. I use it.
By the way, you got to get to those.
I've looked at them, but I use it as a filing cabinet.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I have a Gmail that I use for other purposes.
Well, why is this such a big deal? Is it because it's Hillary Clinton?
Well, if I can just follow just for 1 minute. The idea, though, is that she used one email account for everything, okay? Now, that probably was a mistake, but the reality was in 2009, not in 2008, but in 2009, BlackBerries had the capability of having more than one email account. My iPhone, I can have 8. Okay, so she never switched over maybe and changed it so she could have 2 email accounts
on the same phone.
On the same phone. She wouldn't have had to physically carry one. Even the stories about the 2 phones is a ridiculous comment.
All right,
2015.
so I understand what you're saying, and that's true. Is it because she's Clinton?
Yeah, there's scrutiny on her, I think, with the Benghazi scandal still in everyone's headlights and everyone's focus. This is one of these things that, again, shows, in some sense, on Hillary's part, a lack of judgment. I'm a Hillary fan, and the polls still show her clearly ahead, but this is something that's going to haunt her, and she should have been aware of that.
Yeah, this is a dangerous slip up for her. You know, you talked about some of the other candidates, why it's not a big deal for them. It's because it reinforces that negative narrative of the Clintons, of them playing by their own set of rules while everyone else plays by, you know, the rules.
Right.
And just being shrouded in secrecy and controversy. And it's, you know, come to the point where people are like, are we going to have enough of the Clinton scandals at this point?
Well, that was, I read an editorial this week, and they said, are we looking at another 16 months of drama? Because when a Clinton runs, and to a certain degree when a Bush runs as well, we have this drama. Where are the fresh faces? Why isn't there at this point some challenger to Hillary Clinton?
Oh, if you go back, I mean, if you go back almost 8 years, Hillary Clinton was a presumptive favorite, okay, to become president of the United States. African American community did not back Barack Obama. They thought that he was not likely to be able to succeed. So what they did was they went for the first black president's wife, which was Hillary Clinton. Okay, and what happened was Obama did much better than expected. Black leadership switched and endorsed Obama, and Obama caught fire. Although you have to recognize it wasn't until just before the convention that Obama finally won, because there was the whole debate about what to do with a few delegates because of shenanigans.
But he had it pretty locked in months before, based on the schedule.
It depended on how you counted whose slate.
But time ran out on her. There was no way toward the end that you could.
So what I'm saying is that the fact that there is no rival candidate, there's no one that's really standing up and running against her, is a problem for the Democrats.
Let me ask you, does this open the door to the possibility of somebody like James Webb saying, hey, maybe have an opportunity here to be the clean
I think it
candidate?
does. I think it does, Frank. First of all, we're 21 months away from the presidential primary. And as we all know, that's a lifetime in politics, right? You know, it seems that the Democrats are putting all their eggs into the Hillary basket while Republicans have a pretty deep bench. But, you know, if Hillary continues to slip up, and there's kind of a disgust on these scandals and on a number of these issues from the base of the party, I think this is an opportunity for a new Democratic candidate to rise up.
Hillary should want 2 other people to join the race. That would make it much better for her, because it would deflect issues and it would also give someone to contrast with.
But the opposition should be careful, because if there's much ado about nothing in this scandal, and it turns out that in fact the emails that are released are simply, you know.
I have to smile because it's never nothing about a scandal. Once it's out there in the people's minds, and you have people on the right wing who will continue to talk about this from now until Election Day, so it's never going to go away.
But it's an opportunity for her to project strength in a certain way, and that appeals to Americans. There's an opportunity here for Hillary within the midst of the scandal to craft an image of someone who's unflappable.
But she hasn't so far, in my opinion, Jeanette.
Yeah, but I do think you have a good point that Republicans do need to be careful that this doesn't look like a witch hunt against Hillary. I think they need to let the media do its job and let this process unfold. And it's interesting because, like we said, it's 21 months away. Jim Webb could rise as a very formidable candidate.
Or O'Malley as well, who's
Right.
also expressed interest. Who makes that phone call? What if Hillary gets into another minor scandal here? Who in the world makes that phone call to her, say, Hillary, you know, maybe it's not your time? Does anybody make that phone call?
I don't think anybody makes that
So
call.
she's in till the end.
I think it's her decision to be in until the end. The only way Hillary is not in at the end is if she sees she has no hope of winning. Then she may find a graceful way to bow out. She may have an illness that's cropped up. You know, something could happen like that. But Hillary, I think, really needs to have competition within the Democratic Party.
The primaries have not been friendly to front runners. We've seen this again and again in every primary season. I would be worried if I were Hillary Clinton because I'm so far ahead, so early, that anything can happen. Now they're looking for you to trip up. Being in the media, covering a couple of presidential campaigns, we almost love when that happens because now we have something to talk about. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I completely agree. William Jennings Bryan, Bob Dole, Mitt Romney. You know, this is Hillary's moment.
That's
if she
right.
fails to secure the nomination this time around, she's pretty much done as a candidate. So
Agreed.
she has to be a very careful steward of her resources now, but the front runner is not a great tag to have.
So far ahead, would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And so I think that early primaries in New Hampshire and Iowa are going to start telling the narrative of where everyone is. But you know, when you're the king of the mountain, you're the front runner, everybody's trying to knock you down. So I don't envy Hillary for being in that position, or for some of the Republicans too.
Bill, do you worry that 30,000 emails and her staff had the opportunity to go through all of them and decide which ones they wanted to be public or not are missing forever?
30,000 sounds like a huge amount. I
It
don't
is.
want to be.
It's a lot.
I don't want to be too strange about this, but my email account has 17,000, and I'm not Secretary of State. Okay, so if someone's a big user of the internet, they're going to have big numbers. The issue is that when they were going through and they were deleting their emails, they were really using sort of flags or using certain keywords to see if any of these following terms would have been in the email. Then they were going back and inspecting those. No one actually sat there and physically read every one of the 30,000 emails. It's not the way it's done in corporate America, and it's not the way Hillary Clinton would do it.
But Mr. and Mrs. John Q. Public in Nebraska or Iowa, they don't have 30,000 emails, and to them, that is a large number.
They also don't understand generally the idea that
Agreed.
you can have
Agreed.
multiple email accounts on one
Agreed.
smartphone. So it
Right.
really is the Republican narrative about how big a deal it is, and the Democratic narrative about how this is just the way people operate in a modern era. So that's what's really going to play out. Whose story is most believable? And I also have to say that I think many of the Republican candidates who have this same type of issue have to be very careful, because if they go on the offensive, it's going to come back and boomerang right at them. So you're going to see the Scott Walkers and Jeb Bushes being really quiet about this.
We have just 30 seconds. Has she done well in this first round to explain herself, or did she look a little, I'm going to use this word politely, slimy doing it?
I thought
Making excuses and so on.
she looked relaxed. It was a great press conference. I thought she was able to parry some of the concerns. She has to be careful as well, though.
Jeanette.
I don't think she did as well as she could have. She didn't seem like she was sorry. It was more of a very defensive press conference, it seemed to me. She just didn't seem, Hillary didn't seem ready for Hillary just yet.
Bill,
I'd
real
give
quick.
her a B.
Like a good professor would.
That's right.
We thank you very much for joining us. A very interesting discussion on Hillary Clinton and politics. I'm sure there'll be a few more of these discussions as we head toward the presidential election, would you think? All right, when we come back, the situation in Ferguson, Missouri gets more complicated with a high-profile resignation and the shooting of 2 police officers. We'll explore these latest developments in Ferguson when we return.